One night in 1992, inside Hostel 4, known as H4, at the National Institute of Technology in Bombay, an engineering student named Annie gets pulled into chaos by his best friend, Sexa. Sexa drags him into a water fight, and before long the entire H4 hostel joins in. Annie and the H4 crew decide to take it further and challenge Hostel H3 to a full-on bucket war. But the leader of H3, Raggy, does not take getting splashed lightly. He snaps, and that night, it stops being a silly water fight and turns into a real clash between the two hostels. Fast forward 27 years to 2019. Annie is no longer a student. He now works at a big company and lives in a luxury apartment. But his life is not as perfect as it looks. He is divorced from Maya, his former college sweetheart. Their only son, Raghav, is on edge, waiting for his university entrance exam results that will be announced in just a few days. Almost every night, Raghav calls his friend Rajveer, and the two of them spiral together while they wait. Ani tries to calm his son down. He truly believes Raghav will pass because the kid has been working unbelievably hard and doing everything he can. But Raghav cannot stop comparing himself to his father. When Annie was his age, he ranked 384th in India. Raghav feels like he is struggling just to stay afloat around the 2000 mark. The next day, Annie drives Raghav to visit Maya. When they arrive, Annie stays in the car. He and Maya only look at each other from a distance, carrying all that history in silence. During lunch, Maya gently reassures Raghav that everything will be okay, even if he does not pass. Later, back at home, Ani shows Raghav a bottle of champagne he has been saving for the results day. Instead of feeling excited, Raghav feels pressured. To him, it sounds like his father expects success. But Annie insists it is the opposite. He says it is meant to release the pressure. With tears in his eyes, Annie admits something softer underneath all of it. He says he is going to miss Raghav when he leaves for college, and that one day, memories might be all he has left to hold on to. Then the results day finally arrives. Rajveer comes over so they can check the outcome together, and then it hits them. Neither of them makes it. Raghav just sits there, stunned and glassy-eyed, staring at the screen. He tries logging in again and again, hoping it will change. But the result stays the same. After that, Raghav calls both of his parents. Ani tells him not to lose heart because he can try again next year. Maya does not lecture him or push him. She just listens because she knows that when someone is breaking under pressure, sometimes they only want to be heard. Still, Raghav is crushed. He had been studying nearly 18 hours a day, and now it feels like all of that effort meant nothing. Overwhelmed by sadness and hopelessness, Raghav does the unthinkable, and this is where their story truly begins. Welcome to Chichhor. At the hospital, Maya arrives first, and the guilt hits her immediately. She blames herself for giving custody to Ani, believing he pushed their son too hard to chase the best university. To her, it feels like history repeating itself. She connects this tragedy to their divorce and to what she believes was always the problem. Annie never truly understood her. Soon they learn Raghav is still alive, but he is in critical condition and in a coma. The doctor explains that Raghav has a serious brain injury, and other vital organs have been affected too. If the bruising in his head continues to spread, the swelling could worsen, and it may lead to more surgeries. Annie visits his son, while Maya stays outside. She cannot bear to see him like that. Ani admits something that hurts to say out loud. Over the past year, he barely spent time with Raghav. Not because he did not want to, but because Raghav was always studying, always buried in school responsibilities, leaving almost no room to just live. After multiple procedures, the doctor shares what they often see in critical cases. Many patients recover because they have a powerful will to live. But Raghav is different. His body is not responding, almost as if he has no desire to keep going. Those words stay stuck in Annie's mind. He remembers how terrified Raghav was of being labeled a loser for failing the exam. and Ani becomes desperate to bring his son's spirit back. That is when he thinks about his own past. Back in college, people used to call Ani and his friends losers too. So Ani brings an old photo album from his campus days and decides to tell Raghav the story of H4, the so-called loser hostel, and the wild, ridiculous, unforgettable years that shaped him. He hopes that by sharing that part of his life, little by little, Raghav might find a reason to hold on. The story then flashes back 27 years. We return to the day Ani first arrived at one of the most prestigious engineering campuses in India, a place people said could completely change your life if you were lucky enough to get in. But instead of landing in one of the elite hostels, Ani was assigned to Hostel H4, a place everyone whispered about as the home of losers. Even the hostel clerk suggested he request a transfer right away. Ani, still optimistic, thought he might actually like it there. The clerk only smiled, clearly convinced that sooner or later Ani would come back asking to move. And as it turns out, he was right. Almost immediately after arriving, Ani was greeted by a senior who would later become his closest friend, Sexa. The welcome was not exactly impressive. The room looked more like a prison cell than a dorm, and the cafeteria food was strange, to say the least. By the very next day, Ani was already filing paperwork to switch hostels. On top of that, he kept hearing rumors. Other students claimed the seniors in H4 bullied freshmen and used physical intimidation. The stories made Ani overthink everything. Then one night, all the new students of H4 were gathered on the field by Sexa. Instead of violence, what followed was something completely unexpected. The freshmen were told to dance however the seniors wanted, and Ani was even asked to perform a strip-style dance. At first, he was terrified, but then he noticed something. Sexa was not being cruel. He was being ridiculous. He exaggerated the moves, turned it into a joke, and made everyone laugh. That was when Ani realized the rumors were mostly nonsense. H4 was not a den of tyrants, it was just full of overgrown boys who loved doing stupid, harmless things. As for the nickname Sexa, it was not random. He earned it because he was always up to date about women and romance. His room was filled with stacks of Playboy magazines, proudly displayed like trophies. Back in the present, the mood shifts abruptly. Raghav's blood pressure suddenly begins to fluctuate, and the nurse rushes to call the doctor. Ani waits outside the room, anxiety written all over his face. Maya once again blames him, convinced that these intense stories are too much for Raghav in his fragile state. Nearly an hour passes before the doctor steps out with an update. Raghav has regained consciousness, even though his overall condition has not improved yet. For Ani, that small victory feels huge. Raghav has opened his eyes. More than that, he wants to know if the stories his father told were real. Somehow, the memories are reaching him. Seeing how engaged his son is, Ani decides to take it a step further. He realizes he needs the full H4 experience, not just his own version of it. So he tries to reconnect with Sexa, someone he has not spoken to in years. After digging through old memories, searching for his real name online, Ani discovers that Sexa is now a business consultant based in London. When Ani finally reaches him by phone and explains what is happening, Sexa does not hesitate. He cancels all his meetings for the following week and flies straight to India to see Raghav. At the hospital, the reunion between Ani and Sexa is filled with emotion. Raghav is stunned to meet this larger-than-life friend of his father. And without wasting time, Sexa begins sharing another chapter of the past, the story of how Raghav's parents first met. Back in college, Maya was known as the most beautiful girl on campus. She had admirers everywhere, and she was famously aloof. Ani could only watch her from a distance, intimidated and convinced he did not stand a chance. Sexa is genuinely shocked to learn that Ani and Maya are now divorced, especially considering how hard Ani had worked to win her heart in the first place. And that success had not happened alone. It involved two other legendary members of H4, Mummy and Acid, proudly labeled Loser Number 2 and Loser Number 3. Mummy was a freshman who cried easily and constantly called for his mother, which is exactly how he earned his nickname. Acid, on the other hand, was a senior in the same batch as Sexa, short-tempered, explosive, and always ready to pick a fight. Ani reaches out to the rest of the gang, and as they reconnect, Raghav grows more and more engaged. Hearing these stories directly from his father's old friends makes everything feel real. The past is no longer just a story, it becomes alive in front of him. Sexa then continues with the story of how Annie and Maya first crossed paths. One night, Sexa and Acid came up with a ridiculous plan. They sent Mummy to the girls' hostel, H10, to retrieve some women's clothes, and Annie had to tag along because Mummy was supposedly too shy to talk to girls on his own. But when they actually got there and ran into Maya, something unexpected happened. Mummy, the one everyone thought was hopeless, ended up being the smooth talker. Meanwhile, Annie could barely function. He was nervous, shaky, completely out of his element. Yet somehow that awkward moment worked in his favor. From that night on, Maya began to notice Annie, especially when he returned the clothes later. The gang keeps sharing more of their ridiculous and unforgettable campus memories, stories filled with foolish decisions, laughter, and pure fun. They even talk about Annie's strange habit of starting conversations with Maya by claiming he was sent by his seniors. Oddly enough, that silly excuse became the bridge that slowly brought them closer together. Back in the hospital, the doctor gives an update. Raghav's condition is not improving, but it is not getting worse either. It seems that bringing the old friends together and reliving those college days is helping Raghav regain some inner strength. The story shifts again to the rivalry with H3. Raggy, the senior leader of H3, becomes interested in Ani after noticing his athletic talent. Ani excels in multiple sports and even plays basketball at the state level. Raggy offers to fast-track Annie's transfer to H3, which is cleaner, more luxurious, and filled with international students. But by that point, H4 already feels like family. Ani refuses the offer, choosing loyalty over status. That rejection hits Raggy's pride hard. He and his friends are furious that someone would turn down H3. In their eyes, Annie is no different from Derek, another H4 student who once rejected them. To them, both Annie and Derek are destined to remain losers forever. Derek, known as loser number 4, is seen as the unofficial father figure of H4, strong, steady, and protective of the entire hostel. A few days later, Annie calls Derek as well, and now the full gang of so-called losers gathers to support Raghav. As the stories continue, Annie explains Raggy's real strategy. H3 constantly recruits top athletes from other hostels for one reason: to dominate the annual inter-hostel sports tournament known as the General Championship. H4's reputation as losers is not just because they are wild or rebellious. It is also because they have not won that championship for 15 straight years. Derek has carried the team on his shoulders for 3 years without ever seeing victory. By his final semester, he is exhausted and ready to give up. But Annie refuses to let him surrender. He reminds Derek that this is his last chance. Those words stay with Derek. After semester exams, he gathers the H4 students for serious training and player selection ahead of the tournament. Even before practice begins, many students back out. They already believe H4 will lose anyway. The label of loser has sunk too deep. Still, Derek keeps training those who remain. He pushes them, encourages them, tries to build something from nothing. But the reality is harsh. The team's skills are painfully weak, and slowly it is Derek's confidence that starts to crack under the pressure. Even though Annie's friends have gathered at the hospital and are filling the room with stories from their college days, Raghav's condition is still fragile. The swelling in his brain slowly increases, even though he is conscious and responding. Another surgery becomes necessary. Ani feels guilty for keeping his friends there for so long. They have already taken time off work and put their own lives on hold. He tells them it is okay to go home, but none of them are leaving. Derek makes it clear that when family needs you, work can wait. And to them, Annie is family. H4, the so-called losers, are bound by something stronger than pride. Just as they are about to have dinner, another member of the gang arrives. Bevda, known as loser number 5, the campus drunk. One of them had secretly called him to come help. Despite his reputation, Bevda is a genius at chess. He is practically the undefeated champion of the campus. As preparations for the general championship begin, everyone finds their role. Annie signs up for football, basketball, cricket, and several other sports. Derek takes on weightlifting, athletics, and football. And surprisingly, Mummy turns out to be extremely skilled at carom. They train relentlessly. Finally, the day of the General Championship arrives, featuring 30 different sports. As expected, H3 dominates many events where H4 has no real talent, like badminton, tennis, and table tennis. The gap begins to show. At one point, tensions almost explode when Raggy deliberately provokes the H4 group during a badminton match. Acid nearly loses control, but Derek steps in and keeps things from escalating.
Acid, relax.
As the pressure builds and it seems only Derek and Annie still truly believe they can win, Annie comes up with a bold idea. If they want to become champions, each of them must sacrifice something personal. So they make a pact. Mummy promises not to call his mother until they win the tournament. Derek quits smoking. Bevda stops drinking. Acid gives up swearing. Sexa takes a break from adult videos. And Annie refuses to talk to Maya until they win. At first it sounds heroic, but as time passes, the sacrifices become painful. Old habits are not easy to break. And despite all that effort, H4 still fails to secure a single win. The one who suffers the most is Bevda. The sudden change in his lifestyle shocks his body. He ends up in the campus clinic with severe stomach pain. Seeing his friend like that, Ani tells everyone they can break their promises. Their health matters more than a title. But Bevda refuses. For the first time in his life, he has managed to stop drinking. Watching his friends fight their own battles gives him strength. He realizes something important. It is better to be called a loser for losing to others than to be a loser who loses to himself. Still, Bevda eventually needs proper treatment and is hospitalized for recovery. Back in the present, after hearing all of this, Raghav's condition takes another turn. The doctor calls Annie with troubling news. His son is getting worse. Even so, Annie refuses to give up in the past or in the present. He shares his next strategy from the tournament days. Step 1 is psychological warfare. H4 will distract and pressure their opponents with chants and targeted cheers to break their focus. Annie demonstrates how it works, and surprisingly, it is effective. To build a louder crowd, he even suggests offering free milk to H4 students to encourage them to show up and cheer. Acid, with his explosive personality, is assigned to create sharp, intimidating chants. To make them even more cutting, he writes them while staring at the faces of professors he cannot stand. Once everything was set, the losers put their plan into action, and surprisingly it worked. They were not the most talented team out there, but the cheering squad led by Acid turned out to be incredibly effective at breaking their opponent's focus. Little by little, H4 started winning matches and advancing to the next rounds. Maya even congratulated Annie and his team for their unexpected progress. Still, she could not understand why Annie kept avoiding her. Eventually, Sexa explained the pact they had made, giving up the things they loved until they won the championship. Then Annie revealed step 2 of his master plan. This time, they targeted H3's star table tennis player. Sexa convinced Maya to keep the guy on a late-night call at 3 in the morning, so he would be exhausted during his match.
Hello.
Hello.
Once again, the strategy paid off. In other matches, the losers kept finding creative ways to disrupt H3's rhythm. Sexa, who had a theater background, even joined the football team and exaggerated his dives to draw fouls. Their main goal was to get H3's best player sent off with a red card. It was unconventional, but it was effective. Back in the present at the hospital, Annie opens up to Sexa about his failed marriage. At the same time, Maya confides in Mummy. Both Annie and Maya admit that they never truly understood each other. They both carry regret, especially for never apologizing or trying harder during their arguments. Now, the only thing connecting them is Raghav. Back in the past, after celebrating a few wins at a cafe, the H4 boys run into Raggy and the H3 crew. The teasing quickly escalates. Raggy loses his temper and throws a bottle. A fight breaks out between the two groups. In the chaos, Mummy panics after catching his own reflection in a mirror and accidentally injures his index finger. The others burst into laughter at his swollen finger, completely forgetting that he is supposed to compete in the Carom quarterfinal that very night. Despite the pain, Mummy insists on playing. But every time he flicks a piece, he shouts in agony. In the end, he loses badly, even though Derek had predicted gold for H4 in Carom. Looking for other chances to collect points, they discover an unusual opportunity. The 42-kilogram weightlifting category has had no participants for 10 years. It is nearly impossible to find someone that light. All H4 has to do is register, and they will win gold by default. Then they remember Donda, the skinny kid in H4. When they weigh him, he comes in at 44 kilograms. So Annie and the others push him to lose 2 more kilos in record time, even calculating every possible gram. But just before the event starts, they are shocked to find that Hostile H10 has also entered a participant. Sexa tries to convince Maya to withdraw their candidate, but she has no authority to cancel it. To motivate Donda, the H4 boys jokingly threaten to beat him up if he loses. Somehow, the pressure works. Donda wins, bringing joy back to H4. Around the same time, Bevda is discharged from the hospital and rejoins the team. Thanks to Annie's ideas and Derek's leadership, H4 climbs the rankings. For the first time in 15 years, they sit in second place with 40 points, just behind H3, who has 55. The boys celebrate the moment the only way they know how, with another chaotic bucket war. H4 keeps pushing forward in the tournament. In some matches, they still rely on their clever tricks, but in others, they win purely on skill. Bevda dominates in chess. Annie leads the charge in cricket and basketball. Derek and Acid prove themselves in athletics. As the championship nears its end, only one day remains. H4 is just 5 points behind H3. The next day will decide everything. 3 final matches, all against H3. To win the overall championship, H4 must take gold in all 3 events. If they pull it off, the final score will be 75-74 in their favor. The finals are set. Bevda in chess, Derek and Acid in the relay race, and basketball is the final showdown. There is just one concern. In basketball, H4's biggest strength is Annie. If he falls short, the dream ends. Back in the present, Raghav's condition worsens. The swelling in his brain continues to grow. Although he is stable for now, the doctors warn that if there is no improvement, they will have no choice but to perform one last surgery. It is high risk and could threaten his life. With a heavy heart, Annie signs the consent form. The story of the losers reaching the finals is put on hold. Raghav needs rest. The group returns to Annie's apartment. Watching his son's condition decline, Ani is overwhelmed with guilt. He keeps thinking about the champagne he promised to open if Raghav passed the exam. He realizes that even a gesture meant to celebrate success might have added pressure. He never stopped to think about what would happen if Raghav failed. Annie reflects on something deeper. So many people plan only for success. They celebrate victory before it even arrives. But almost no one prepares their children for failure. Out of 1 million students who take the exam, only 10,000 get in. That leaves 990,000 who do not. And most of them are never taught how to face that disappointment. Instead, they start believing that they themselves are the failure. After everything that has happened, Ani no longer cares about rankings or universities. He only wants one thing. He wants his son to survive. His words move everyone in the room. Mummy immediately calls his own son and promises to give him whatever gift he wants, no matter what grades he brings home. Maya finally breaks down. Through tears, she admits that Annie has always been a good man. Annie also apologizes, regretting that he could have been a better husband. That night, no one can sleep. Then suddenly, the doctor delivers devastating news. Raghav has suffered seizures. The bleeding in his brain has worsened. The final surgery cannot be delayed any longer. They rush back to the hospital. Before the operation begins, Ani makes one last request. He asks for just 10 minutes with his son to finish the story because he believes Raghav needs to hear how it ends. This time, Maya stands beside him. She trusts him. Together, they convince the doctor. Finally, the doctor agrees to give Annie 10 minutes before the surgery starts. The story continues to the night before the finals. Raggy decides to play dirty. First, he targets Bevda. He shows up at Bevda's room with a bottle of beer, pretending to celebrate H4's success. His real intention is clear. He wants Bevda drunk before the biggest chess match of his life. Then he makes his second move. During the pre-race briefing for the relay, Raggy deliberately pushes a teammate so that he steps on Derek's foot. It looks accidental, but Derek's foot starts bleeding. And in the basketball arena, the atmosphere is already against H4. The crowd is overwhelmingly cheering for H3, the favorites, the stronger team on paper. To make things worse, Bevda shows up late looking completely drunk. All three finals begin at the same time. Bevda sits down at the chessboard. Derek and Acid prepare for the relay. And Annie steps onto the basketball court to face Raggy and H3. Each of them faces obstacles, but Bevda's situation seems the worst. Chess demands full concentration, and he appears intoxicated. But then it becomes clear that Bevda is not careless. He came late and acted drunk on purpose. His strange behavior makes his opponent underestimate him. In the end, Bevda outplays him and secures gold for H4 in chess. At the track, Derek's right foot is heavily bandaged. It still hurts. But he has no choice. He is the final runner, the one who must close the race. H4 is trailing at the start of his lap. Pushing through the pain, Derek runs with everything he has. Step by step, he catches up. In the final stretch, he overtakes his rivals and wins. Another gold for H4. Now it all comes down to basketball. H3 is leading by a significant margin at first, but Annie refuses to back down. His energy spreads to his teammates. Slowly, the gap narrows. Raggy grows frustrated as H4 refuses to collapse under pressure. In the final moments, a foul is called against H3. Only 6 seconds remain. The score stands at 65-63 in favor of H3. H4 needs a 3-point shot to win the entire championship. Annie makes it clear that he will take the final shot. Just then, Sexa, Bevda, Acid, and Derek rush onto the court and tell him the news. 2 gold medals are secured. Everything now rests on this one shot. If Annie makes it, H4 becomes champion. He takes the shot. And he misses. In that instant, Annie is crushed. His teammates break down. All their sacrifices, all their effort, and they still fall short. Back in the present, Raghov is stunned hearing this part of the story. He cannot believe that after everything, H4 still lost. Annie explains that this is the end of the story, and it mirrors exactly what Raghov is feeling. Raghov studied 18 hours a day. He prepared with everything he had, and still he failed the exam. Annie and his friends did everything they could. They trained, sacrificed, strategized, pushed themselves beyond their limits. And still, they lost the final game. Listening to the story, Raghov assumes that back then, the boys of H4, especially his father, must have felt like complete failures. He imagines they probably wanted to give up, maybe even do something reckless. But that is not what happened. After the final match ended, something unexpected took place. In the days that followed, no one saw them as losers anymore. Instead, people cheered for them. They were applauded for their courage, their spirit, and the fight they put up until the very last second. Even Raggy, their biggest rival, walked over and congratulated H4. He acknowledged that they had played like true champions and had fought with everything they had. That is how Ani finishes his story. He tells Raghov that an exam score does not decide whether someone is a loser. What truly matters is the effort you put in. And Raghov had given his all. He studied relentlessly. He did everything he could. That alone means something. Hearing this, Raghov finally breaks down. It is as if those were the exact words he had been waiting to hear all along. Not words that push him to succeed, but words that allow him to breathe, even in failure. Before Raghov is taken into the operating room, Ani leans close and reminds his son to prepare his heart like a warrior and to never see himself as a loser. The surgery is successful. Slowly, Raghav begins to recover. A year later, he takes the exam again, and this time he earns his place at a university. And when he finally arrives on campus, he is not alone. Both of his parents are there with him, along with the friends who stood by them through everything. The boy who once thought his life was over now steps into a new beginning, stronger than ever. So the moral of the story is failure does not destroy a child, but feeling unloved because of it can.